Well, good afternoon. I don't know, the Google Earth thing kind of makes my head spin a little bit. I just want to grab the table and hold on there for a quick second. How about you boys blowing in the wind up and down today?
The wind I thought was going to lay down a little today, but it did not. But it was definitely better than yesterday.
Okay.
Yesterday I took Drew for a little boat ride. We went 66 miles downstream, and we got to where we thought we were going to fish off of after a hot tip that we were going to pull 10, 12 pounds easy. It got down there only to find we were going to fish in 5-foot waves. So, it was a more enjoyable day today in town, in the wind, caught some nice fish, and now Drew's going to buy me lunch. So,
there you have it.
I just decided that right now.
What kind of lunch? I guess it doesn't matter where you get your lunch these days. You can get your lunch at McDonald's. It's still going to cost you $20 a person, right?
Oh, I'm going to make him spend more than $20 on me.
Oh, yeah.
High maintenance.
You bet. Full rack of ribs. I would go with the whole doggone thing. Yeah. Justin Seaverday, Drew Schutz here with us on the Midday Show. It is Sharpe Showdown number 3. And this is the final day. So we've got some boaters that are going to join us here in just a little bit. I don't know. You guys weighed in early. You got your 5. Actually, you had your 7. So you got your allotted number, and it's what? Oh, they're oh, really? So I don't have time to adjust the leaderboard. Let me pop this up here real quick. Okay. So there's the leaderboard, and that's what we've got for right now. But you guys weighing now. Kurt said you're in second place, but
I think that might be a little generous. That put us into second place what we weighed so far. But yesterday we had one giant for 1.3 pounds with our little adventure down south. But today, we had a decent bag of fish. We just threw fish in right away this morning because we're like, yesterday we didn't do that great. So we probably better just keep some fish. So we kept some small ones, and then all of a sudden we got some bigger ones. It's like, well, we made a mistake, but a decent recovery, a better showing today, and that's the main thing.
I don't know much about it, because I'm just a talking DJ, right? But my thought was if you had 5 in the box each day, you'd probably have a chance at a check and maybe even winning it, especially if you had that one over. Like Ryan and Matt have that 5-pound fish, that 25-incher, that made all the difference for them. But even at that, if you take a peek at the leaderboard here, they've got a 2-pound, we'll call it a commanding 2-pound lead, because who knows what's going to happen here today. You weighed fish and you weighed 5 at
7:17, I think today.
Okay, 7:17. So,
and we didn't have an over today. So you look at Ryan's bag from yesterday with that 10 pounds. If they had a 5-pounder in there, and you take that out and replace it out with just a standard 16 or 17-inch fish right now, that's a 4-pound swing. So, that just puts them in the middle of the pack yesterday instead of the leaders.
Right.
And that's how Sharpe is. And, we just got done with the National Walleye Tour, and that was one thing that I really emphasized with that is it's tough to be consistent on Lake Sharpe this time of the year. You might go out and have a big over, one day, but you can't duplicate that. And it could happen either way, right? You could have 5 pounds one day, 20 pounds the second day. Look at Bobby Crow, 21 pounds on day 1, almost an insurmountable lead to overcome. And then he only has 5 pounds on day 2, and he still wins by 3 pounds. So that's just how Lake Sharpe is this time of year. A lot of it comes down to whether or not you can get an over and a good over. And that's what, Ryan had yesterday. Ryan's a great fisherman. There's no getting around that. And sometimes you need a luck to win a tournament. And so hopefully they have a good day today and can finish it off.
Yeah, I know he said up, and I want Cardenas to be a little happier with me. I'm going to pull that a little closer to you guys just in case. We've got the backup mic going here too, but yeah, it's Ryan said, "Boy, I'll tell you what, I wish I was in second place." Because that first place spot, right? Especially when fishing's tough, that's a stressful spot to be in. Even if you have a 2-pound lead, it's still super stressful. Because you've got to go out and perform. Now, the crazy thing is you could run all those miles, but you could just sit out here in the hole. You could go out by the bridge. You could go off your dock. You can go just about anywhere and probably bag 5 fish. But the weather has really made things tough. Mother Nature's not been stable. She's been bipolar. The thing that I talked about the other day, the fact that low pressure is associated with clouds and rain and storms and such. And I hear we have a bunch of that heading our way. And I don't know so much in the center part of the state. I think now the river is on the edge of the enhanced or that slight chance for severe weather. But I know getting closer to the I-29 corridor and me driving home, we're going to have some icky weather over there. But here's the thing. On Thursday, we had a cloudy day. We had rain and pressure was high. It was 30.2. Now, I'm a pressure nut. It doesn't really mean anything, but it does when the weather guys always say, well, you know what, that cloudy, rainy day is associated with low pressure. And then the next day on Friday, 30.3. So those type of pressures are associated with the bluebird day, not a cloud in the sky. So I think it really probably has something to do with the fish's attitude. You know, I don't know about here. The further south you go, the deeper the water, right? So maybe a little bit different than up here where it's shallower, but then you don't have stable weather. Things are up and down, and the fish don't really go about their life eating like that. I mean, that's the only thing they got on their mind, right? You know, I think they probably rest because they can or want to, but it's either that or being ticked off and the reaction bite. This entire tournament's all about a reaction bite, right? I mean, are there really that many walleye feeding? We've got some pre-spawn. We've got some that are spent. It's a mixed bag.
I think we had one pre-spawn that was like 16 and a half inches, and we had two that were about 19 that were post-spawn.
Yeah. Well, look at Bobby Crow's two big ones,
yep.
The 9 and the 7. They were pre-spawn.
Yep.
You know, I don't think they had let go of eggs at all. They looked like they were very healthy pre-spawn walleye. So it's really anybody's guess. I sit in here and I don't get to see the fish close up. It'd be interesting to see what the day looks like today. I didn't even check the pressure. I just looked at the fact that we had the chance for wind, really, for the most part, and maybe a thunderstorm, but it's not going to affect the tournament. We have, we'll call it 3 hours before we really get down to the nitty-gritty part of it. But still, you know, tough. You guys, you fought the weather. You did all of that. Do you wish we never get into the program? You know, when you watch National Walleye Tour or the Masters Walleye Circuit or you read Target Walleye, they talk about the program. And I know I've had a lot of people say, what program are they talking about? Is there like a show or something that we should be watching? That no, so the program is the plan,
yep.
Right?
Yep.
So can you guys break down the program? I know we always say, well, we don't want to give any secrets away or anything, but yet, you know, break down a program.
So you want to start?
I'll let you start.
So I'll just tell you like how I generally look at tournament fishing. So you were just talking about, you know, pressure variation, right? And you'll even get to the point where, you know, we talk about solar and lunar maximums throughout the course of the day. And when we tournament fish, generally, what we're trying to do is find places that right away in the morning we know we can get fish, and maybe those fish will shut off mid-morning. And then we'll have an area where we're going to mid-morning to mid-afternoon where we know that those fish are going. Mm-hmm. And then we'll have a spot in the afternoon, and it might be the same spot that we were in the morning, but a completely different spot. And so the program is, what technique are we going to use at what period of the day? And in some places, like it used to be on the Great Lakes, your program was, I'm just going to troll crankbaits all day.
Sure. Right.
Well, here, you know, you could go troll crankbaits right away in the morning. Like Fort George is just a historically, you know, or a historical spawning site for walleye. So you get, you know, 12 miles downstream, you have a giant sand flat, you have rocks, all of that. So, you know, if you're tournament fishing, you might say right away in the morning when I launch, I'm going to go down there and get shallow. I might pull crankbait shallow on boards and try to catch a big female pre-spawn up shallow and try to get that fish, right? Well, when the sun comes up, she'll probably start to push, or those females will start to push off into a little bit deeper water. Well, maybe then I'll switch from trolling crankbaits where I might want to go cast at those fish as they drop into deeper water. Or I'll just move up or down the river and I'll cast to them, or I might go troll crankbaits somewhere. And that's the program, right? It's what are we doing at a certain period of time because we're confident that fish are biting at those times. And then as you get later in the afternoon, you might say, hey, maybe those fish are pushing back up for the evening to spawn again. So maybe you run back down to Fort George. And so your program goes from that's plan A, and then plan B is your second spot. And then you revert back to plan A. So the program really is just what are you doing at any certain point of time throughout the day how you feel that you're fishing most efficiently to maximize an opportunity to catch a good bag.
Right. So, okay. So then we take Bob Crow and we look at what he did. He did it basically off of Bass brand baits, right?
Yep.
Swim
He was
baits.
casting swim baits up to shore. Yep.
So do you, because as a wannabe guy, you know, I do my In Through the Outdoors, and I try to do a 2-minute episode every day to give people an idea of what I've done or I've tried. So if I'm going to go out and fish with you guys in a tournament, I'm going to say, well, I might have 5 or 6 elements to it, and I look at the bass world, and right away I wonder, okay, am I going to put the Ned rig into it? Am I going to do a drop shot? Because live sonar now is telling us that the walleye just aren't on the bottom all the time. Yep. I'm starting to catch walleye that I'm in 16 feet of water. I'm drop shotting. I've got fish coming in 3 feet down, and all of a sudden they're down and they attack that drop shot. Well, so what are we doing? Do you guys go out and think about, well, there could be walleye in 3 feet of water. There could be suspended walleye off a break. You know, do you dare spend an hour or a half an hour with shallow cranks behind the boat, hoping to catch something because you mark stuff in 5 feet of water? I mean, do you waste your time with that, or do you go with stuff that you know, period? You know.
So I mean, I'll just, and then I'll stop talking. I'll let Drew talk. But this whole idea, like, let's say that in the morning you get these fish in 5 feet of water, and they're right on the bottom, and you're casting to them, right? And people will say, well, in the afternoon they're deep. Right? That's what people say. And the whole thing is that those deep fish, they were always there. Okay. But people overlook the fact that those fish that were at 5 feet right away in the morning, they might be now in 30 feet of water, but they're only 5 feet under the surface. Right. And that's so what they're just cruising horizontally through the water column. Walleyes do not adjust quickly to great depth changes. Right. And we see that with barrel trauma a lot with walleyes. We catch them out of 40 feet. We bring them up to the surface. We turn them loose, and they don't survive. So these walleyes, do they move and transition from 30 feet of water and they come up to 5 feet of water to feed and then go back to 30 feet of water? They absolutely do. But the one thing that forward-facing sonar is really teaching us is that if you find these fish shallow in the morning, they're probably going to be shallow all day long, but they're going to suspend over deeper water. Because they might be up on, you know, chasing gizzard shad or spot tail shiners or some sort of minnow up shallow in the morning. And then that forage base, even if they're smelt, are going to move horizontally out over deeper water to suspend. Right. And these fish are going to follow them out to do that, to continue feeding. Like, that's what a walleye does. Like, they feed. And that's the one thing that forward-facing sonar is really teaching us, is that, you know, we used to think, well, we get them in the morning, we get them shallow, and then we got to go deeper, and then we got to get them there. Now it's not that. It's, where can I find these fish suspended shallow over deeper water, and then most effectively present a Ned rig or a swim bait or a jig and a minnow or a jigging wrap or a finisher or whatever it is you want to throw at them. And that's where tournament fishing has really went to, right? Because you'll find too that there are big fish that follow them out. And I know this guy right here, you know, this is his first season fishing full-time as a pro on the National Walleye Tour. And, you know, he's traveled with me the last couple of years as a co-angler, and he is really zeroed in on this whole forward-facing sonar and tracking these fish in there. And so I guess you can give your 2 cents on there, since I'm talking the whole time.
Well, I mean, what really opened my eyes is last summer I was fishing June, July timeframe, and I was up shallow like you were talking, Justin, and I threw a glide bait out there, and I was in shallow water, dropped off to deep water, and then all of a sudden I thought it was a carp or a bass. Like, on my forward facing, it was probably 1-2 feet under the surface. I threw it right in front of its nose, and all of a sudden it just took off to the bottom. I set the hook. It was a 9-pounder.
No kidding.
Yeah. And the amount of fish that I've tracked and caught in that water column, it's unbelievable. Now, not all of them. I mean, like Justin said, they go up and down from that thermal climb, but it's been eye-opening the last couple of years.
Walleye are everywhere.
They
they're absolutely everywhere. Yeah. It just blows my mind.
Yeah.
You know, I'm 59. So as a kid, Grandpa always said they're always on the bottom, and they were.
Yeah.
Right. You go back to 1970 when Al and those guys started fishing the walleye hard and heavy, and everybody was on the bottom with the Lindy rigs and such. And I don't know, you are a much more educated man, and we've never had a chance to talk, but I'm going to bring it up. I think because we have stocked fish, we have fish doing things that they wouldn't normally do in nature because they are raised in a tank, right? You got no sand, you got no gravel, you don't have rocks, you don't have weeds.
They don't know right from wrong.
They don't. All they know is the food comes from up there, and they go up and get it, and they come back down. They don't have to worry about Big Mama Northern coming in and snatching them up and having to hide. They don't have any of that.
They don't know about
So,
it.
right. So I think the natural instinct of a walleye has changed over the last couple of decades, right?
And you have to think about it like this too. You know, we generally associate walleyes with like that 65 degree to 70 degree water temperature. And we say that's their ideal water temperature, and that's where we're going to find them. And you think about it like this. If it's 110 degrees outside, but a chef tells me they're going to cook me a delicious ribeye, and I'm sitting in my house and it's 65 degrees in there, but I have to go sit at 112 degree, on a picnic table in 112 degree weather to eat my ribeye. But then I can go back to my air conditioned house immediately after. I'm going to go eat that ribeye and then go back. And walleyes do that too. Like you'll see walleyes, like guys will say, man, I see so many fish and they're 30 feet down and they won't bite. And you'll talk to the next guy. He's like, man, I caught him today in 5 feet of water. And that's the whole thing. They're out staging in that deeper water, that air conditioned room. And they are just coming up the break and they're feeding heavily in 5 feet of water that's 80 degrees. Right. And it's just like, that's way too hot. That's smallmouth bass and carp weather, catfish weather.
Right.
But then they eat aggressively for 10, 15 minutes and then they just slide back down that break. And then they're not active anymore. So people just beat their heads in and they're like, man, I can't get them to bite. But to go back to forward facing sonar, you get some of those fish, they go up there and they're like me. Like I'm a glutton. Like it's like I had my ribeye, but I can go have a piece of cheesecake out here, over 40 feet of water, and it's still 5 feet down, 80 degrees. I'm gonna go over there and have that afterwards, and then I'll go down. And that's where we find these fish out suspended with forward facing sonar, and it could be 100 yards offshore, and people, just people are starting to wrap their heads around them. And one thing I do want to say, while I am taking up all the time talking,
That's fine. That's why you're here.
Forward-facing sonar is not the cure. Like just because you have it, it does not mean that these fish bite all the time. Like I hear from so many people, they're like, you guys are ruining the sport as tournament anglers because you're out and you're just decimating these fisheries. Forward-facing sonar is an amazing technology, but it is not the cure-all to catch fish. Like can't tell you how many bad finishes I've had in tournaments because I'll sit and try to force a fish to bite for 45 minutes because I know it's the fish I need to bring in, but it does not mean I'm going to catch that fish. So sometimes it's detrimental.
Right. It can cost you a tournament.
And I can only have, my limit here in South Dakota, is four per person per day, right?
Yeah.
So what does it matter if they are in a bite and I'm using forward facing sonar? What does it hurt if I go catch that limit in 20 minutes versus 2 hours if I'm still taking 4 fish out of the system? That's what that limit is there for, is right to protect the fishery. And that's what I try to explain to people is forward facing sonar. It's great. We're learning so much about walleyes, like you're saying, and these walleyes that they don't know about this big pike that might eat them because they've never seen one before until they hit it. Right. And, but forward facing sonar, it does not help you catch the fish. It allows us to learn what these fish are doing. So I just want to say,
but that's awesome though.
Yeah.
Really, when it comes down to trying to understand, when it comes down to chasing Walter, it's kind of important. Sure, you can mind screw yourself in big ways, right?
Really
I mean, you just absolutely just wreck it. And so for me, I gotta have live sonar. I gotta have forward facing sonar everywhere. So I built a unit that works on riprap. So I'm out there and I've got my deucer out there and I'm looking around and I'm chucking Ned rigs around. I got nothing. I mean, there's just nothing going on whatsoever. I finally put it all away and started fishing, and I was much more successful.
Yeah.
Right. But you gotta have the tools with you.
Sometimes there's just no school like the old school.
Yeah. Right.
So we can use forward-facing sonar to target areas that we know that are fish. We know we're fishing areas with fish, but sometimes, like what we did today, and I stopped rambling. We can talk about how we caught our fish today. We caught probably 40 fish in 3 hours. Like
So yeah.
But we identified an area with forward facing sonar, and then we just went to jigging. Like we weren't using
vertical jigging. So you weren't trolling, you weren't moving slow.
And as soon as
spot locked,
and we were looking around with forward facing sonar, and if we spotted an area where it's like, man, they're really loaded on the brake, then we just hit anchor on the trolling motor, and then we went in and we just started casting that area. We caught some fish casting at that point. So we're using it to identify areas where there are fish, but we weren't using it to actively target those fish. And so, that sometimes is the most important thing. And I always try to tell people, like, we have all of these amazing tools. We have side scan, we have down scan, we have high chirp sonar, we have forward facing sonar, we have amazing mapping. Our trolling motors can hold us plus or minus 3 feet on a spot if we want to. But sometimes those old techniques that have been around since the start, with a chartreuse jig and a minnow on it, that's just the way that you're going to get them.
Yeah, right. Or you can be Tom when you use black, which I understand too. I do get that. Drew, what's your go-to? I mean, when you're out there, when you start, what are you, now that you're a pro, because you learned from, right? As a co, you learned a lot of stuff from a lot of pros. So that had to have changed your program and the way you approach a tournament as a pro.
Yeah, absolutely. Prior to even fishing with Tom last year at Lake Erie, and then the championship, ironically, my go-to was a black moon eye.
It was, okay.
On Lake Sharpe anyways. With that and a minnow, like, I didn't own a boat till 6 years ago. And within the last 5 years, I'm like, okay, they really like black around here. So that's just always my go-to. And that's kind of my go-to everywhere I go. And then for this tournament, I touched jig head colors that I never thought would matter. And all of a sudden I'm like, well, these have never been used. And now I'm almost out of them. So I have to go restock.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
So, I truly think that, and I just had an episode on, BS on color. I threw the BS flag on color. Because as an ordinary average guy, I start thinking, I take in everything. When you guys talk, I take it all in. When Tom Bowling talks, I take it all in. Jason Mitchell, everybody. So now I'm sucking stuff up like crazy. So what do? I become a sponge, and so now I know more in my head about fishing than my hands do. Right. So now I'm in trouble. Because, I've got to have 6 of these colors, 6 of these colors, 6 of this color. Then you realize that walleye are colorblind, and maybe only a few colors are necessary. Like Tom, you need black, you need all these other colors.
It's a contrast thing.
Right. It's a contrast thing. And so my thing is, what side of the boat did the fish bite on? Did they bite on the silhouette side or the side with light that adds color? Right. So now let's get into Walleye X, and let's get into your baits and all of. Now we're talking color, and we're talking different options. A lot of, like they say, it's to catch the fisherman's eye. Yeah. But they all catch fish because the one side of them is always, let's just call it black, right? It's a silhouette.
And if you look at let's take Walleye X as an example. So we started as a crankbait company. For trolling and casting crankbaits. And over the last few years, since forward-facing sonar is getting to be such an incredible tool and arsenal, that that now we've got really big into designing casting baits. And we have a bunch of casting baits, soft plastics, tungsten jigs, the whole lineup, stuff like that. But to your point of this contrast, if you want a really effective crankbait, and I'll tell Drew this, one of my favorite baits, or Drew knows this, we talked about this, he just went and bought a pile of them, and Lake Sharpe is an original Rapala floater. And if you watch an original wrap move through the water, it has no rattles. It's made out of balsa wood. It's as simple as it can be. It's been around for over 100 years. And why is it such an effective tool? It's because it flashes, it's the rolling action. It has such a wide roll. And this contrast thing, because you can have a white, you can have a pink, an orange belly, and a dark back. So that fish sees this bright belly and then sees a dark back. Right. So it's contrast, right?
Right.
So it's moving through the water, and it's that flash, it's that contrast. So does color matter? Yes. But you're talking about contrast with an animal that is virtually colorblind. But from 50 feet away, if it sees something that is white and then it sees black, it really sticks out. And that's what makes these fish chase, right? And then it comes down to like trolling crankbaits. If we get into that, I'm a huge proponent, and I've made a lot of money trolling crankbaits with S turns, tight S turns.
Sure, yeah,
always
right. Yep.
That
Always.
serpent. People will say, "Oh, Digger's out there, he's drunk out in the boat." It's like, no, I'm just trolling because you're stalling and you're speeding up those boats. And with that contrast, because walleyes will chase, like that is what they do. And if all of a sudden they get 5 feet behind this bait and all of a sudden it stalls and they about hits them in the nose, all they have to do is just open their mouth and it just goes right in, right? Yeah. Or if they get close to it and all of a sudden you turn to the outside and that bait takes off, then it's like, I eat right now or I might not eat later. And that is a reaction strike. And so contrast is huge. Color, sometimes is it way overhyped? Absolutely. But you need to look at, to your point, that whole, is it in the shade? Is it out of the shade? And it's the contrast, right? The fish that's down sun of it in the shadow, they're seeing a lot less of that contrast as the fish that bait is shined directly on there. So there's just so many different aspects of it. But if you sit down and you think about it, it all makes a lot of sense as to what these fish are doing. And I know me, I overthink it way too much.
So do I, and maybe I shouldn't.
Yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, all they want to do is eat. Where Drew, he's very methodical on things and he thinks things through very intelligently. And so, he takes all this information in, because I'll just spew out what I'm doing like I do now, and he just listens. And then we get done with that, and he's like, I get that, and then I'm going to apply a little bit smarter technique that's a little more efficient than you. So my boat looks like a tornado went through at the end of the day. His boat is nice and organized at the end of the day.
Yeah, I have to have organization too. Yeah, no doubt. But so, Drew, do you hang your hat on any particular colors, or are you looking for the contrast and that that flicker of something different that causes the reaction?
Are you saying in general, or
yeah? Okay, let's go crankbaits. As long as we're talking specifically about a silhouetted side, the side that doesn't have the light, you've got to have light to have color, and especially underwater. Now things really change. If you're fishing red in 10 feet of water, it's still red, but in 30 feet of water,
it turns to more of a brown.
Yeah, right. Right. We see a lot of those natural type colors. Maybe that's why red's so good.
A couple of things that I think about, and this goes through my mind, is your water clarity, sunny or cloudy, and then your forage base. Like when you get up on Lake Wahi, you have your Cisco's, like herring, all that stuff out on the main channel, right? So like there, I kind of gravitate towards like your silvers, your whites, your chromes, blue chromes, and then you start going back into some of the bays, and I start catching more perch. Well, back in those areas, you put on something fire tiger or yellow perch, and all of a sudden it's just crazy what something like that'll do. And even if you run down to the lake part on Lake Sharpe, like it'll transition from like I'll find spots where like, that yellow perch or fire tiger will prevail. And then you have to switch colors if you move to a different spot. So those are the few things that I really think about first. And then, once you start getting into like dirty, murkier water or something like that, then I start looking at like your contrasting colors, like you and Justin are talking about.
Right. Okay. So
that's all. That's how I do it.
No, but that's true though. I mean, you when you really get into the weeds on it, or you can just hook on a crankbait and go. I think about this fall for me was way different, and I hate to go back to it, but it was such a successful November. Trying to find these fat females, these walleye, right? And I had a great season, but I spent 26 days out of 30 on the rocks, casting like crazy. And I learned that the best crankbait to throw at them was just true perch, just a perch color. But then nightfall would come and the sun would go down and it wouldn't work. But I went to fire tiger and bam. So you do have to pay attention. There are a lot of guys who go out to Walmart, you get the Zebco combo, you can get on the ice, or rather on the shore, you can crank it out there and you can catch a 25-incher right now and go, wow, look at me. And look at what was tied on that thing. It didn't even make any sense. They just made it because it looked good to a kid, and it cost 3.5 cents to make, whatever. But then you look at bouncers. Now, do you do bouncer at all?
I'll be honest. Sometimes I love a good bouncer bite. I don't like to admit to it, but they're really, once these fish get fired up, there are a few techniques that are more effective than a bottom bouncer with a minnow or a bottom bouncer and a night crawler. I mean, that's just the way it is.
I agree. You know, growing up with my dad, my brother, my cousins, all that, like we had 2D sonar, right? And that was just to show us depth, not really to look.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And I mean, at the time we probably had like a little 2-inch screen, like you could barely see where you're at on the GPS. It's like I grew up bottom bouncer fishing, and every year I look forward to that May bite down at West Bend or June, July up on Oahe, and it'll never leave me. I love all the forward facing stuff, but I still enjoy a good bottom bouncer bite. And not only that, like I started playing around with like inlines and boards, and you know, a lot of people associate pulling bait as just super boring. Well, I've seen a lot of boards disappear, and it adds a whole nother dimension, making me a lot of fun.
Yeah, it does. I talked to Tom Goodmestead about planer boards. He's never done it before.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, Tom, I get you, because I thought it was the dumbest thing in the world when I first heard about it, until I really saw it, did it on Green Bay, and then started using the lighted planer boards. You know, it's a whole different way to fish, and it's an absolute ton of fun. You know, the board thing makes a bunch of sense, especially with side imaging. You're in a shallow basin lake. I've got a bunch of those. Even, you know, Thompson and Sinai. Sinai's got 30 feet, but you're still fishing in 8 to 12 feet of water. And if you're in the smaller 6 to 7 foot lake and you're rolling over the top, you might have your trolling. You're still scattering fish.
Yep.
But if you're out there to the left and to the right, you got a bingo. So I could talk about this crap all day too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So I mean, you just, you know. But let's check in with the anglers. Hey Ryan, we're sitting here with Drew and Justin, wondering how you're doing there. We've been kind of flapping our jaw, so if you can hear us, let us know what you got going on there. And they may not be able to hear us because they're working pretty hard. There we go. So Ryan Thompson, our current leader, what's it look like on the water for you guys?
Windy again.
Oh, yeah, okay. Imagine that in South Dakota, or from what I understand, any state.
Tide isn't quite as good for us today, but we got some fish in the box anyways.
All right. All right. So you're working on it. All right. We'll let you fish. We're going to check in with James and Trayson here too. So thanks, fellas. I'll mute you and you can go back to talking and doing what you got to do. All right, James, Trayson, it's Chasen here with Justin and Drew. How are things in the boat for you guys? You've got two. Oh, okay. All right. I think you guys muted your phone, so I can't unmute you. But you got two. We'll let you fish. You go ahead. We're going to check in with skippers here once. Lauren, Justin, how are things on the water for you guys?
Oh, going pretty good. We got a couple fish in the box here, and we just kind of been holding out for some bigger ones, hoping, or bigger slots, you know, hoping to play the ounce game, I guess. So, but part of the day where we're gonna try to just get some fish in the boat.
All right. So, do you want to tell us how many you have in the box?
We got 2 in the box.
Yeah. All right. So you got some work to do yet.
What's that?
You got a little work to do yet.
A little bit of work to do. Yep. Okay. Yep.
All right. Hey, we'll let you back to it. We're just kind of talking nonstop here, and I thought I better check in with you guys. So all of you keep fishing, and we'll keep watching you. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Awesome. So yeah, it's fun to be able to do this stuff. Yeah. Right. It's stuff that here we're in Pierre, South Dakota, and then we're kind of, we're playing along like Bassmasters, and it's fun to be able to connect, and for these guys to have the patience. And you guys were going to do it too, but you finished early and decided to come in and join us early. So that's good. That's fantastic to have you here. And I'm very grateful to have you here. But for this whole technology and all this stuff is truly amazing. And then to be able to sit here and talk about it, it's big. It's absolutely, it's monumental. And fishing the National Walleye Tour, both of you are out there doing it. What do they have? 93 this time. Things are, and I'm not bashing the National Walleye Tour, but the number, they always want 125 because they're always looking for that free championship, or that is it. I'm trying to remember, 40 boats, right?
So the top 40 pros get the invite into the championship. Now, if you win a tournament and you're not, in top 40 in points and you fish all the tournaments, then you still get an invite. So you could have more than 40, but that is the average, 125 boats per tournament for the pre-championship. 93 boats for the Pierre, the first event. That is the smallest number that I think I've seen. I mean, it's been like 5-6 years, I think, since we've seen a number that low, which is a little bit scary. Hopefully when we get to lacrosse, it's better. It's tournament fishing ebbs and flows. It's been a tough economy the last year and a half with the way interest rates have been. And so some companies just aren't putting forward money for sponsorships the way that they used to be. And so that, definitely hurts some guys in the sense that they have to have those sponsor dollars to, take off and, fish all these events. So they might only fish 1 or 2 instead of all of them. And, the local participation, I think, was really good on this. South Dakota, you come in here, like, there are a lot of guys in town here. And I, Drew and I, we live here. There are a lot of guys around here that are some of the best fishermen I know, like that they could be out on, the NWT, no problem. So around here, when you show up, you get locals, and they're not just, run of the mill guys that are donating cash. Like, these are serious anglers that go compete at the highest level anywhere. I mean, we're watching some of them fish right now.
Yeah, right. Oh yeah, no doubt.
They're phenomenal fishermen around here. So thankfully we had a really good, I bet we had 20 locals in this tournament for the NWT. Otherwise, our touring pro numbers would have been pathetic. So hopefully lacrosse will see a little correction, but I guess we'll see what happens.
When you look at the way things are going now for the locals that fish the National Walleye Tour, and then of course the Sharpe Showdown, it just goes to show how tough things are right now. That even the home guys,
I popped. It was one of the worst tournaments I've ever had, and it was at home. I was so embarrassed when I got home on Thursday, but that's just the way tournament fishing works, especially when you would have told me on Thursday morning that I wanted to have been right there to win on Friday. I would have slapped you. And I don't know, and that's not me, but anyway, like when I come in, just big old humble pie, that, it's good for me. But that's just how tournament fishing is, and sometimes you're overconfident. But I was glad to see, Tyson Keller was right up there towards the top of the leaderboard, and Tyson's the king of Hawaii, and he's just a phenomenal fisherman anyway. So it's not, I think what were him and Maxon like, looks like Skipper's got one going on right now.
But, let's see. Let's unmute him and go to it here. That's also the nice thing. We can just sit here and listen. Do you guys use the Bubba scales? Yeah, they are. Aren't they something?
I don't own one.
You don't?
No, I have.
You still have a Devco Delier?
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't even see a scale on his boat.
They're in my glove box. They're in my glove box.
Feel and
Here we go. There we go.
Nice fish.
All right, boxing a good one. Lauren, is it a pre-spawn or do we have a spent walleye there? I couldn't really tell.
This one's milk and male.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Thank
There
you.
we go.
All right. There we go. Hey, good eye. I'm glad you're watching that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to.
A fisherman always. So I'm not going to say the name of the angler, but there is a National Walleye Tour pro. His saying or motto is "Watch for nets." That's how he does his pre-fishing, and so that's just something that you pick up on. You see a bent rod, you're paying attention to everything because we're all vultures.
I get you. I learned that. So anytime, even when I'm on the highway, the net's low.
Yeah.
Everything is super low. And then the next thing that I learned when you're rock hopping is to just let the walleye play out.
Yep.
Because they will drop right into the net once they're a little bit on the poop side, and you don't have the show. I had a guy pull up on me and he stood there watching, and I'm doing everything because I'm getting a little cocky now, right? Because it's a big walleye. I'm like, watch this guy standing up here. I want to net this thing. And it was in and out, in and out, in and out, and it flopped out. And the guy goes, I'm sorry. I'm like, well, it wasn't your fault. I was the one that got cocky. And I said, it was 5-6 pounds, no big deal. No, it wasn't. No, that was all of 8, if not 10. And they're like, is that what you thought? Because then I really screwed up. I should have let her play. And it was
Ryan going? Nope, he's just cranking on quick. Yeah, no, that. Oh, he does.
Oh, we do have one.
Matt.
All right.
Okay.
Good eye. Let's pop the mic on here and let's listen.
We shouldn't even have fished the tournament. We should have just came and did this.
It's kind of fun.
Yeah,
It really.
good fish.
Oh, there we go.
There you go.
So interestingly enough, yesterday when we were watching, it was about 12:30 when everybody started hooking up. It's 12:40 right now. So the bite window is about the same.
Must have had an ultralight rod.
They put it back. Did they put it back? Okay. They're not going to say anything out loud, so we'll
help us.
What was that, Ryan?
I said we put it back. It wouldn't help us.
Oh, well, okay. All right.
We got one tag left, so we need at least a half pound upgrade. So
okay. All right. Well, good luck to you. We'll mute you and keep watching.
Okay.
It's got to be tough for these guys to know that we're all sitting here watching.
Yep. Watching,
and they you kind of have to perform for the camera a little bit.
Oh yeah.
You just can't go about your own, your sailor ways, so to speak, right? Because you don't know when you're gonna hook one and then have somebody turn on and go. So Drew, talk about your year last year. Couldn't have gone any better, right?
Well, other than the fact that Justin got knocked out at Lake Erie.
Well, okay, so
fished the rest, but the whole National Water Co-Angler deal, like aside from fishing locally here, you have the river, you have the lake up above, like you don't get a better opportunity to experience so many different types of techniques to fish. And then you think about like the bays where you can go back in there and it turns to like more of a smaller lake, like you fish,
sure,
over where you're at in a sense. But just going and hats off to Justin for allowing me to travel with him. But you go hop in and pre-fish at these different places. Like I love the part that you get to go to these different parts of the U.S., hop on a body of water, then you fish with the pro that you're traveling with, or a couple pros that you draw. And some of I've learned a lot from just like the local guys that hop in for kind of a one and done deal. But you just learn so many different techniques from all the Great Lakes to the river systems to, we go to the Mississippi River next. Like I've always heard Justin talk about, what are the little...
Yeah, the little willow cat.
The willow cat.
I was going to call it a wildcat. I'm like, well, I know that's not, but yeah, willow cat.
Yeah, I mean, you learn to fish so many different techniques.
Little guy, but we're going to take it.
So that puts 3 in the box for you then, right?
Is that 4?
Or is it 4?
Got 4 now.
Yeah, that's right. You had 2 and Ryan threw one back. Okay. All right, we'll unmute you and keep her going.
Yeah, and then you kind of fast forward to the championship. You go to Lake Huron, and that's tough body of water. But then I fished 3 different areas of that lake, and we caught fish in all 3 different areas.
Oh wow!
Yeah, day 1 we were in deep water with Ben Teets, and I didn't think fishing out there in 5-6 footers was possible. So we have to work on that, Justin, because we could have done it yesterday.
Well, the problem around here, the wave stack's so much shorter than on the Great Lakes, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so it's tough to control a boat out here. I mean, you can run 4-foot waves on Lake Erie. You can run 50 miles an hour, and here, if you do that, you're going to be buying a new boat.
Yeah.
So let's try to help people understand that, because even I don't know, but Oahe can be treacherous, right? Because you've got 3-4 footers coming out of every direction, and I'm trying to figure out which direction the wind's actually coming from, right? So you're flapping waves, but if you're out there trying to fish them, and you've got tight waves, if you've got room between a wave, you're just kind of riding the highs and lows, right? Yeah. But then you get into water like here where the waves are tighter. Now you're up and you're splashing or smacking down, and
or you're just taking them over the bow,
right? And it's just impossible.
Yeah.
So depending on the lake and the length of, I wouldn't even know what you would call the distance, but you probably know the distance between.
Period.
Okay. Yeah. So, I wouldn't even really have thought that much about it, but maybe that's why we see anglers fishing in windy conditions like that because we're not used to it back here.
Yep.
Right. And it is a little more fishable.
You have to practice it. Like, probably 2 years ago, I started going out in windier days because normally, like, you want to avoid it, right? But you have to be able to fish in that, because if you're going to tournament fish or if you're going to do some guiding, like, as soon as the wind comes up, you can't just be like, well, I'm going to leave the boat on the trail. Like, you can, but you're never going to place high or have a good day of fishing.
If Kurt says we're going fishing, you got to go fishing.
Yeah, right. Yep.
Well, you know, even like today, like, it was windy out, you know, the way we were jigging,
I had to be up on the bow, up on the trolling motor, and you just have to eat it and try to keep the boat under control and in the depth range you want to be. And you know, it's controlled chaos. Like, if he'd have a fish on, I'm into the back of the boat and half a second net the fish, and then I'm right back up on the trolling motor. So you know, that's just the way you have to do it. But you know, pre-fishing, you get to experience a lot of different conditions, and you kind of get used to it. Even running a boat in big water, like in waves, you know, it's just stuff you learn where it is what it is. You have to go do it, especially if you're going to pay, you know, $450 or $2,000 for an entry fee. Like, you're going to go fishing. Like, you have to try to get your money back out of it. So,
and that was something I was going to mention too, like the co-angler side of things. I looked at Justin, I'm like, I don't know if I'd feel comfortable coming out here. Like, it's one thing just to go fishing, but then you can have a 10, 15 mile per hour breeze, and you can have 3, 4, 5 footers out there on Green Bay, Lake Erie, you name it. It's like, just driving and being safe out there. I mean, that's far most important part of it, but you could go take your boat over there and just learn crash course. But this guy, I would argue, even though I've seen him run a boat faster in bad conditions than I ever would, is arguably one of the best. Like, he can just drive a boat, probably the best I've seen. So,
yeah, and you see your boat on the water too. You know, that big walleye thing. So you can't go anywhere without people knowing.
No, everybody knows
who you are.
That is kind of one of the problems with running a wrap boat, but it's great advertising. You know, it's a mobile billboard. Like, you know, I get my excursion and that hooked on. You know, it's 40 foot of walleye X advertising, and I can't complain about that. So
okay, so let's talk more about the waves. You talk about handling the boat, and you talk about boat control, but then there's boat control and casting and feeling the jig or the bait. You know, I watch, and I think it's because Max Wilson, you know, Owen and Hoyer and all those guys, we see them more because of Tour Level Gold.
Yep.
We see them more because they're a little bit more prominent, you know, and so we watch them, and I watch Max Wilson on a windy day out in the middle, out in you know, offshore, I guess, to steal a bass term. And I'm like, how the hell does he get that done? That boat's doing this and the props coming out of the water. He's like, how the heck do you guys feel that? I played with a $625 G Loomis rod the other day at Dakota Mart here. And Louis Valens, my neighbor up at South Whitlock, said, tap that, you know, feel it. And so we went through a variety of different rods from 300 to 600. That $600 rod, I could feel that tip from my finger all the way to the palm of my hand in cork, for Pete's sake. So is that part of the key?
I think line plays a big part of it too, is having, you know, that's where super lines really come into play, because you'll feel that tick even in the wind. Or if it's super windy, I love having neon green, like this color, because it's incredible. You watch your line bounce, right? And it's like, you might not feel it if you have a big bow in your line, but you know you have a bite and you notice at the hook. And it's just a feel thing. Like even running a trolling motor in waves, like, you just get to feel like where your foot needs to be without looking to see where the trolling motor.
Muscle memory.
So or like we're just talking about driving a boat in big water. Like, it's just something you have to go out and do. And Drew is really good at that too, is feeling those bites in big wind, big water. And you know, I always enjoy, like, this is my second co that I traveled with that is turned to the pro side, and it always makes me a little upset, because then it's just one more person to steal a check from me. And Drew's a phenomenal fisherman, so but you know, I'll let him talk on what he thinks in big waves and line combo and rods and stuff like that. So,
you know, I would say the fire line is definitely important. You know, I do still use a lot of monofilament too, like that.
So leaders or a
No, like
complete
straight
spool, you're spooling
Yeah.
straight.
On certain techniques, yeah. But in my opinion, like that sun comes out and on windy days, those fish fire a little bit more. And yeah, you go through that spawn time frame where the fish are a little more lethargic, where you have cold water right away in the spring. But once you transition into like that, you know, 50+ degree water that
Right.
you're covering, like there's not a whole lot of thinking for those walleye. Like if you're gonna throw a 3/8 black tungsten in a night crawler, you're gonna feel an 8-pounder thump. Like
Right.
you just
Right.
do.
Yep.
Last year when we were at Lake Erie, Tom and I were pitching jig and night crawler, and it was windy out. There's probably 3-4 footers, and I threw it out and I was feathering it down. All of a sudden, my line got tore out of the.
Justin got one.
We missed you. You stuck your head in the camera and we missed you. Come back to us. No, maybe not. I'm glad you guys are watching because I'm busy watching you talk.
Might have been a tree bite.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, there could have been. Little bottom bats
today too. We caught a few of those today.
Yeah.
We'd be in first place.
Yeah.
too.
And they're out there. You know, or you could be up on a wahi and think you've got another 10 or 12 pound walleye and it's a catfish. And then you think you got another, and it's another 15 pound catfish. Okay, so you mentioned Tom Wynn. Let's talk. Go ahead.
I watched my jig in night crawler fall right in front of, I think it was probably a 5-6 pounder's face. And I couldn't even like do a whole lot. And that fish just turned, grabbed my jig and tore the line out of my hands because I was trying to feather down. And Tom goes, "Oh, don't close your bail." I said, "Tom, I didn't. That fish just took it." And it just took off right to the bottom with it. I set the hook. It was, 5-6 pounder.
So here's we're learning things from Tom Wynn, right?
Yeah.
The number one there is patience.
Yes.
Don't set the hook too soon.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us, and I had a chance to fish with Pat Slapper on Table Rock, and I was so damn nervous. I got my 3 fingers and caught in the bail, and he's like, "What's going on?" He goes, "I'm like, Pat, I'm so doggone nervous. I mean, I'm not kidding you." He goes, "Why? We're fishing with me?" I'm like, "Seriously, I picked you in Bucket C. I got you in Bassmaster Fantasy Fishing, and now I'm fishing with you in person." And so the first spotted bass that I hooked up, I set the hook and I lost it. And he's like, "You're a walleye guy, aren't you?" I said, "Well, I fish for walleye. I mean, not as." He goes, "You got to set the hook, right?" So there are some guys. I know my brother's good for it, and he'll give it everything. He'll give me a between hook set that. I think I modeled that after my brother's hook set because he just crushes it, and you lose fish that way.
Yeah.
So Tom, and you telling the story about that fish has it in its mouth, and if it has no resistance, it's going to keep on, and a lot of times they will just take to the bottom and finish the job, set the hook, and you go, right? So these lessons that we're learning are amazing. Like Tom says, you should be able to feel a fish on slack line. And I'm like, I can't feel a fish on tight line sometimes. How the hell do you do it on slack line? But I didn't realize that he keeps the line in his finger. And a little trick there, I guess, because I don't. Matter of fact, I went, it was Dave Underhill. It was Kurt's dad that taught me to go from a Zebco to a spinning reel. And I looked like a doofus that day, but I caught a 28-incher and it's hanging on my wall, right? So if you watch the podcast between hook sets, it's the big one. It's the 28-incher hanging on the wall. And so I learned to do that, but then all of a sudden I meet Dan Spengler and meet some of these other guys that are really big into bass. And I made the switch to bait caster. And I will not throw a crankbait with anything but a bait caster, period. But there are some applications, like if you're going to toss a jig, tossing a jig with a bait caster takes practice. And I will do that. I'll sit out in the yard and I'll try to put one in a 5-gallon pail at 30 feet or whatever. And it's very tough. But to feel that bite, to have that line on your finger is really, I guess, is key, especially when you're doing that kind of fishing.
But then, you transition to, last fall we would go up to Wahi and we did a kind of an exclusive trip to try to catch giants on his walleye X lures. And I mean, there's just no doubt about it. Like when you see a fish shoot up off the bottom, like you just close your bail and rip, and all of a sudden there's 14 pounds in there. And like, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say that's the difference. Like, you know, that's kind of combat fishing. Like we were fishing glide baits, like the walleye X kamikaze. That you're trying to induce that reaction strike, and since it's a hard bait, there's no scent involved, no live bait. As soon as they hit, you have to be on it, right? And you know, jig fishing, like a jig in a minnow, if you feel the bite, like same deal. I like to carry the line right on my fingertip. You feel it, let them have it, because if they have that ribeye in their mouth, they're not going to drop it. Right. And if they do drop it, they're going to follow it down and they're going to grab it again. So let them have it, you know. And then I, after a few seconds, then close the bail and then give them the Bill Dance hook set.
Yeah,
that's sometimes my favorite part of the whole deal. Whether it's a night crawler, a creek chub, a minnow, a shiner, you know, yes, setting the hook too soon can be detrimental to that process. If you're fishing a soft plastic paddle tail, split tail, a glide bait finisher, casting a crankbait, in those situations, when you feel the bite, you better be out, because they're going to feel that resistance, that hardness. It's not natural. They're going to try to spit it out. Yeah. A minnow, a night crawler, something living, and they get that little bit of scent. Oh yeah, just let them have it, because you're going to be getting the forceps out to get that hook out from their gullet.
Which is pretty cool. I fished with a guy he's a Vexlar guy, he's a flasher guy on ice. And we were fiddling around with the Garmin when I bought it. And he went and got his own and went out fishing. And he missed every hook set. And he's just peeled. And you know, you have over-filtered or out-filtered yourself. You got the screen so clear. Listen to Tom Wynn. You don't need clear. You don't want a clear screen. So if you're ice fishing, if you jig up and things come up and you let it go and it comes down, if it isn't like this, you're missing.
Yep.
You know, so here again, forward-facing sonar, you can live by it, you can die by it, most certainly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it takes something special. Had you fished with the 86 series from Garmin? I've got the Eco Map.
So, you know, I actually just transitioned away from my HGS Pro 16, and I put an 8600 series with a live scope on my trolling motor. And I was telling Justin, like, there's plus and minuses to both. Like, I've ran both, and this will be my first summer, like, going through like the combat fishing, right? But you know, on the Active Target 2 with that new update, you can track your lure really good, and the bottom separation, like seeing those fish on the bottom, is really good. Now you transition over to like the Garmin. It doesn't have to be the 8600. Like it can be a 9 or 12 inch screen. Like for me, I like that. Like I think it's amber. Like it shows up kind of orange, and then they look like little fireballs. On Active Target, my color scheme that I ran, they're more just like bright, just like a blob there. So there's plus and minuses to both, but I'm excited to get into the post spawn fishing and really dial that in, because personally, and it's probably because I got to spend 2 days with Tom on the boat, but I mean, he pretty much coached me and taught me how to like read how big of a fish it is, and then what type of fish it is. Like at Lake Huron, when we won the championship together on day 3, he was casting up front. We were in pretty big waves, and I was just panning around waiting to find a walleye that was an upgrade to cast at, but I would wait to cast until he would stop the trolling motor to cast.
Sure.
And there was a few times that I had a fish on when he did, and I just dropped my rod and I went and netted his fish.
Yeah.
So I never did put a fish in the live well that day, but that's just part of the co-angler deal. So
and that's the problem with Tom Wynn. Tom Wynn is a phenomenal fisherman, and then to make things worse, he's a great guy.
Yeah,
so,
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah, so he's as good of a guy as you'll ever meet, and he's he's teaching everybody.
Yeah, and the THU, if you don't subscribe, if you don't buy the Tom Wynn University,
I'm a student.
Yeah, I am too.
Yeah,
you know, it was $235, whatever it was, and I know he's always offering a discount depending on whether it's Easter or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, take advantage of it. I kind of like, we're watching Skipper's boat, so we're really
It
getting
looks
an
like we
idea
got
of what
some Rapala rippers. Or not, no, that's a walleye excavator. What do they call it? A Rapala?
Rip and wrap.
Rip and wrap, sorry.
Get rip and wrap.
Yeah.
I swear, I don't know. I guess that's probably, for a quick second, I thought it was a reef runner or something, but I saw Fire Tiger and different things like that. And I don't know, fellas, if you can hear us, sorry, we haven't gone to you too much, but we really got deep into it here. I've been having fun.
Yeah, me too. I could sit down literally all day and talk. That's why I like when Drew and I are out in the boat, because we talk about a wide range of this stuff. And like today, we fished a technique that Drew hasn't really done, and we got a few hours of experience in on it. And he, like I said, Drew is so fantastic. He just absorbs everything like a sponge. And he'll say, well, this is some knucklehead stuff that Justin does in the boat, when he's
Right.
vertical jigging, and then he'll improve upon it, right?
Okay, yeah.
So there.
So I weigh in for the first event, or not the weigh in, the rules meeting for the first NWT. They were like, "Hey Drew, we want to interview Outback with you," and I'm like, "For what?" And they want just your experience with everything. And I told them, I was like, "Well, I take the good and the bad from all the anglers, and the bad isn't bad. It's just there's always things that you can pull good and bad and refine them and hopefully make a better version." So
That's why I'm not happy.
it didn't really show on Lake Sharpe. I mean, I pulled in a 55th place finish, but part of it was also the blame for myself and not running that Bubba scale before, because I threw like probably 2 or 3 fish that were 1.5 pounds in the water, thinking they were 1.08 pounds, as in like when you're calculating on your iPhone.
Yeah, right.
Not that they were 1.5 pounds. So I arguably should have weighed at least 1 pound to 1.5 pounds more for the tournament, which doesn't sound like much, but that would have pushed me to 15.5 to 16 pounds, and it would have also put me in the top 30. So
I'm getting on Amazon and getting a Math for Dummies book.
yeah, I don't want to do that, but that did happen. And
Great fisherman, terrible with mathematics.
I'm just goofy that way too. I always try to do something on my own. Like I don't buy spinners, I build my own.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I do whatever, right? And does it get me anywhere? No, but I learned a little lesson about bottom bouncers. When you try to straighten out a bottom bouncer, you can really screw yourself.
Yeah.
Because you literally, I finally saw it on my Garmin, on my forward-facing sonar. I've got it backwards and I'm fishing and everything's fine. And I let it down. I'm like, okay, where did my bouncer go? Where did my spinner go? They're gone. So I brought them up in my kitchen and I pulled them on the floor. And the minute I pick them up off the ball, they turn over, literally flip over upside down because I straighten them out and they're not perfectly balanced, right? There are some brands that are perfectly balanced. It doesn't matter what you do to them. They'll pull upright. But then there are other brands that don't. And so if you're out there and you're pulling bouncers and you're not catching any fish at all for like 1.5 years, take a peek at what you've done with your bottom bouncer. If you straighten them out, or if you just leave them all crumpled up, and it's amazing.
I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm not the only one that does that, because I've had people judge me. They're like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "You have to have this."
That's
It's an angle thing.
Yeah,
That's
angle
exactly.
thing.
Here's your math again, right?
And I used to always run them on spinning rods, and not that you can't, like that is just fine. But when you start to fish on places where you have a lot of like depth changes, and you actually need to kind of know where you're at, like I run all line counter reels. If you're on a lake that's 5-10 foot deep, that's one thing. Like you can kind of just use a spinning reel and do that whole deal. But I try to run all line counters, and if I'm taking guys out fishing or family or friends, like it really helps everyone catch more fish.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I use Berkeley's metered line. They don't have it anymore. Are we getting a little warm? Is it hot in here?
I think it feels great in here.
I'm starting to feel like, I might be getting a little bit warm because we don't have the air on or anything, but that's fine. I see it's already 1 o'clock, so we're going to have to wrap it up here in a bit anyway, but it's been fun to talk. But no, I use the metered line, and a couple of friends will, so what's up with the colored stuff? Well, if we're in 7 feet of water, I'll plop out. I'm like, well, I'm just halfway through pink, halfway through pink, halfway through pink, halfway through pink.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about the line counter. You get in deeper water, it's a little bit
Yeah.
harder to keep track of every 10 foot and each of the colors.
Yeah.
So it speeds up your whole process, because you got 4 lines in the water, and I'm very slow at it.
Yeah.
I'm terribly slow at it.
And it's consistency.
Yeah.
Like,
Right,
you know,
right.
line counters, even if they're not calibrated out, if you put the same amount of line on all of your line counters, if they all say 50 feet, it might not be truly 50 feet of line,
But close.
but they all have the same amount of line out. Same way with your metered line. You know that everything is fishing at the right depth you want. And then even to, you know, bottom bouncers, you were talking earlier about slowing down and being patient. And that's where, you know, like those moderate or medium moderate action rods are so important, because you see that bite on a bottom bouncer.
I
And then
love them. Yeah.
You need to let that rod load up. You know, as soon as people see a bite, I need that rod right now. No, just slow down. Let that fish take that bait and have the hooks in them before you get all excited and rip it out of the rod holder, because you might just rip the bait right out of their mouth, and then they just take off. So just let that, you know, if you're bottom bouncer fishing, be patient. That's one of the most important ones.
And get rid of the medium rods. I mean, if you're fishing, I love 6.5. So I'm a 6.5 medium now. I'm starting to look at that medium moderate. Looking at a fast tip, extra fast, depending on what I'm going. Fast, extra fast with bottom bouncers. If you're fishing heavy, I will use them, because now I'm down at a 1/2 ounce.
Oh,
I never thought in a million years. A buddy did it up on Devil's Lake. He's like, I just use 1/2 ounce bouncers. I'm like, no way, no way. Oh, wow. And here again, if you're fishing ounce here and you're fishing 1/2 ounce out there, you're out further away from the boat. You know, you've got all this. You've got all this control on presentation, and it makes a ton of sense. So here's the thing: we could talk for another hour. So here's sometime we'll talk for another hour. How does that sound? On Wednesday nights, we generally have another hour. And I told Kurt, I said, here's the thing: between hook sets, it's great that we get to talk to people, but let's talk about. Let's hold a crank in our hand. Let's talk about baits, how we use them. Let's do that kind of thing. So there's an invite to join us, and let's get.
You just let us know when.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. I want to get into it. Let's say hello and goodbye to everybody here. Ryan, Matt, we're going to wrap it up because we're so tired of talking, and we've had fun watching you catch fish and not catch fish. Thank you very much. We'll see you back at weigh-in.
Thanks.
All right. Good luck to you. Thank you, fellas. Appreciate it. All right. Let's go to James and Travis. You guys are kind of bouncing with the waves there. We didn't get a chance to talk to you. How are things going today?
I think you have to unmute.
Oh, that's right. We didn't talk to them because they were muting. Okay.
Gotcha.
Like, okay, yeah, we're done. And that's okay. So we're going to pull it out, and we're going to go back, and we're going to do the big thing here, and that is we're going to say goodbye. So, fellas, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
It's been great. It's the Sharpe Showdown, 3rd annual here in Pierre, South Dakota. We're at Steamboat Park Amphitheater. Love to have you here for the live weigh-in. If not, join us here, because we're going to start at 3 o'clock. I usually hit the live button about 2:55, and that'll give people an opportunity to just kind of set things up and get ready to roll, because Kurt will fly at 3 o'clock. So we appreciate it. Fellas, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right, thanks.